Wysong, and I'm going to start out with a little video that we did. It's about a 3-minute video that shows our company and more what it does, so it'll help you understand more about us than they say pictures are worth 1,000 words. So, and then I'm going to talk about the company after this video. At the end, I also have a copy of a magazine article that was done about the company that I have about 10 copies here if you wanted to take one of them. It explains more detail maybe for you. So let me play this video and then we'll get started. Well,
Wysong Enterprises, a full-service helicopter completion facility in Blockville, Tennessee, continues to experience record growth. With more than 40 years' experience, Wysong has earned their reputation as one of the industry's best-performing completion centers. With completions serving a number of market segments, including law enforcement, emergency medical services, utility operators, and other special mission-oriented operations, Wysong has become a trusted leader in the aviation industry.
Wysong Enterprises is a family-owned operation that strives to listen to our clients' needs. Then we put a program together that will exceed their expectations. Well, we've come a long way in the last 20 years as the technology changes. For the next 20 years, it's going to be wide open. We're going to see devices such as talking cockpits, voice commands in the cockpit, electronic wire detection of high-tension wires, and other devices that we haven't dreamed of yet.
For Memphis, Tennessee-based Hospital Wing and their fleet of EC-130s, Wysong has long been the choice for keeping their aircraft in peak performance.
Wysong has helped us tremendously in our completions. We love the support. If we ever have any issues, they're the first people we call.
Wysong also custom builds ICS drop boards, medical interiors, camera mounts, and other equipment. Numerous VIP aircraft have also been completed with highly detailed, luxurious interiors and paint schemes. When reliability is paramount, Wysong's capabilities are trusted to deliver mission-ready aircraft for private owners to our nation's emergency services providers.
Our quality and our dedication to customer service is what sets us apart at Wysong Enterprises. Our growth has continued over the last few years, and we expect this growth to continue for years to come.
Wysong's reputation is forged in taking care of the customer during the initial completion and for many years to follow. The growth the company is experiencing is a reflection of this dedication and commitment to providing great service for their valued customers.
See if I can get this. One of the questions I get asked a lot is, how'd you get into this business? And so I kind of wanted to start back where I came from and give you a little bit of history on how I got into the company business, and I'll talk more about the company. I was born and raised in Dayton, Ohio, birthplace of aviation. And when I was 18, I got tired of the cold winters, so I decided to move to Florida, and I had an opportunity to go to Florida Bible College. So I thought, well, fun in the sun, girls, and warm weather and all that, I'd go to Florida. And but before I left, growing up, my father actually passed away before I was born, so I grew up with my mom and my grandparents and sister, but my grandfather died at 5, and he left in the house we lived in all this, in the basement, a room with all these power tools and wood and all this equipment. So as a kid growing up, I kind of taught myself how to build things and work on things. And So really my background's mostly been self-taught. And then in high school I got interested in electronics, and I had an electronics teacher that kind of took me under his wings. He was also a pilot for a small airplane. So I kind of got my feet wet in aviation electronics. And so like I said, I moved to Florida when I was 18, and I feel like that we all have a calling. God's got a gift for us all, and I realized real quickly this talking in front of people about my business is okay, but trying to quote scripture and pull things out of scripture like preachers do, I just wasn't me, wasn't my calling. And so I jumped over a couple years ago in 1972 into electronics school in Miami area and got my basic electronic background. Then I had an opportunity to get into aviation in 1974 at Collins Radio in Miami. We serviced black boxes for airlines down there. It was the electronic boxes, did the landing systems. Switched from that and got into corporate jets at Fort Lauderdale in the mid-70s. And then I had one of our customers used to fly a helicopter for Delray Farms. It was a horse farm down in West Palm. And he came to me one day and says, you know, you ought to start your own business. Over at Crescent Airways was a helicopter operator in Hollywood, Florida. And they weren't doing much on radios. So I got together with them and gave them up a little bit of money to buy some equipment, and started my first business, Wysong Avionics, in Hollywood, Florida in 1979. And we got into helicopters when you barely saw a comm radio in it. Nowadays it's full IFR with autopilots and just all kind of equipment in there. But while I was still down in Florida, one little niche we got into is a couple of Miami TV stations brought us some equipment, so we'd like to send a signal back live. Can you put this on the aircraft? And so I got it on the aircraft, got it approved, and it started working. And so I started getting a niche for the TV helicopters. And a couple of the manufacturers made the equipment, didn't know how to install it, and they're selling equipment around the country. And so they brought my name up. I didn't have to, I really didn't have to advertise it. It was kind of word of mouth. And I had started getting stations all over the country calling me about doing completions. And so we started doing the TV helicopters. And in 1982, we decided to move out of South Florida. My son was born, and I had met my wife down in Hollywood. And so we ended up moving to South Carolina in 82. And we were there about 4 years, and things were going kind of slow over there with the business. So I got talking to 3 people that mentioned to me about a helicopter company over in East Tennessee in Bristol here, Piney Flats. It was Edwards and Associate at the time. They didn't have a radio shop. So we got to talking, so I decided to close that business down, and I went to work for them and moved over here to East Tennessee in 1987, and just loved the area here. And so I went to work for them, but after I'd been on my own for 7 or 8 years, it's kind of hard sometimes to go to work for someone else, because I had to still deal with the same kind of troubles on the aircraft and fix things. But now I had 3 bosses yelling at me, why aren't the aircraft getting done? So after 2 years of that and putting night and day in that, I thought, if I'm going to work like this, I need to do it on my own. So I went back on my own, started Wysong Enterprises in February of 1989. And like I said, I had this niche for the TV helicopters, and I had 3 stations, Orlando, I think Atlanta, and Ohio, that had called me, wanted me to do TV helicopters for them, put the specialized microwave equipment, camera systems on it. So I had work to do, but I had to travel and go to them. So kind of a interesting story. My wife don't like hearing the story, but first year we loaded up we had an Astro van. We had a daughter then, Holly, and they were both young in grade school, and so my wife decided to homeschool for a couple years. So we loaded the 2 kids up, and her and I, and we went on the road for about a year, and we used to work out of the hotel room, and she'd be doing wiring harnesses and homeschooling the kids, and I'd be over at the airport putting the equipment in the aircraft. So it really literally started as a family operation out of an Astro van. And but after a year, she decided she wanted to stay home, and so I had brother-in-law, my brother-in-law Tracy came on with me and his wife. And we traveled for 3 or 4 years doing work around the country, which was kind of good because we got a reputation around the country for what we did. But I was in Dallas one time doing a job, and I'm not changing videos here, so these are just some examples of what we do. But I was in Dallas, and we did this job about late 90s, and the pilot was telling me, he says, you need to move down to Dallas. He said, all these helicopters are down here. It's where the business is at. And I was telling him how beautiful it was in East Tennessee and what I was doing. I could almost move anywhere in the country, but I just loved the area here. And next breath out of his mouth was, he says, well, that sounds like a nice place to live. I've been wanting to get out of this area myself. And so anyway, we stayed here, and after we got done with this particular job, I told him that, because I was gone almost 3 months, and everything started getting really sophisticated on the equipment. And I told him, I says, if I do another one for you, I says, you really need to bring it to me. And they said, well, we would have brought this to you if you said something. So we set up at Tri-City Airport. It used to be the Appalachia Flying Service hangar, started in their corner. And they were there a year or so, and then the airport, they left, and Tri-City Aviation took over both hangars, the north and south end. And I asked Don Carter, I said, what are you going to do with your maintenance hangar? He said, well, I'm going to rent it to you. I said, oh, that's nice. I went from a corner of a hangar to a whole hangar. And then a couple years later, we decided to put a paint shop in. So we moved into the main part of the hangar. So now we have the whole south end down by the control tower, 3 hangars down there with a paint shop and do full completions now. One unique thing about this helicopter, this one did come back up 4 or 5 years ago. We did some upgrades, but I counted them. We have 25 different antennas mounted on this aircraft, and it's a real challenge to get antennas on a helicopter and not having to interfere. Some of them are like that pod underneath. There's 3 in there, but for all the different equipment, and we was able to make it all work without interfering with each other. That's the instrument panel of that aircraft. And this was a TV one that actually just came back for some upgrades a few months ago. It's out of Oklahoma area, and they actually go chasing tornadoes out there. And they go up right next to them and film them, because in a helicopter you can move and get out of the way. If you're chasing them on the ground, you might run into a river or something you can't get across. But in the air, and they get pretty close to them. I've seen some of their videos, but they go tornado chasing with these out there. And so this was the install we did, I guess about 20 years ago, and then it came in and we condensed it down into a smaller box because technology's kind of has decreased now. So make sure I don't get ahead of myself here. And so we were mostly doing TV helicopters, but then in 1999 I was approached by the original owner that had the hospital helicopter for the Johnson City Med Center, and the organization was called Wings Air. And the owner back then wanted to go to a larger aircraft, so he had us do the aircraft, putting all the EMS equipment in it. And we didn't have a paint shop then, but they sent it to Knoxville to get it painted, and it was such a bad paint job. That's when I decided to get in the painting business. And so we started a paint shop, and then after that we did all their paint work after that. And that was in 1999 we added paint, and it helped bring in corporate people too that saw it. We moved in also into law enforcement, doing a lot of state police, county sheriffs, just all different agencies around the country. And being the mayor's here, I got a mayor's story for you I wanted to tell you about Charlotte, North Carolina. We were, about 8 years ago when they were having the Democratic convention over there, they got notice, Charlotte did, that the Department of Justice, I think it was one of the federal agencies, was going to give them up to $1 million to help upgrade their helicopter for security to assist the federal people, but for Charlotte, because they had two helicopters. So it was like Christmas for the aviation department. It's like, what toys you want, and we're not paying for it. The federal government's paying for it. So they put out a bid, and there was 2 shops that were in the running for the bid, and we were one of them. But the other shop told them it came out in January, and the convention I think was going to be in August, and they had to have both aircraft completed by the 1st of July. And if they weren't done, they weren't getting reimbursed by the federal government. So they went. The other company told them, well, we need both aircraft 5 months. And they said, well, you're basically grounding our fleet for 5 months because we only got 2 aircraft. So we told them we could do the first one in a little over 2 months, and the second one would probably be less than that, so we could do one at a time. So we were able to get to work, and we ended up, the first one was about 75 days that we got it delivered, and the second one was less than 60. But before we got started on these aircraft, we went over to Charlotte, talked to the aviation department, exactly what they wanted to do. And they said, before you leave, the mayor's office wants to talk to you downtown. So we thought, okay. So we went down there, and they came in the room. They said, now we want you to understand that Charlotte is not paying $1 million to do these upgrades. If we don't get reimbursed and these aren't delivered by a certain date and they don't fly for the convention, we're not getting reimbursed, and that's not going to happen. So we were able to make that happen and get it done for them in plenty of time so that they could use them for the convention. And so that's my mayor's story. When we put paint shop in, it led us into a lot of people saw the quality paint job we did, and that's one of the first things you see on an aircraft. So it turned into a lot of the corporate guys saw the work we did, and we started getting a lot of corporate completions. We had a car dealer out of New Hampshire area that owned a bunch of car dealerships, and he bought a helicopter, and he went out and took a picture of the inside of his one of his Lamborghinis was a red and black leather. He said, this is what I want my helicopter to look like inside. So I don't have a picture of it with me, but we did it, and it looked, and he was very happy with it. So I was able to get that done. So where am I at? This was the Charlotte Police Department aircraft we did. It's over at Tri-City Airport one day before we delivered. This one's about 8 years ago. And that was we did this whole instrument panel for them where did all the avionics and just a lot of work. So this is kind of a picture we took recently of our shop, kind of a wide angle. We were a little slow last year because of COVID, and so we had time to get things done. So we kind of really redid the hangar and painted everything, made it really upgraded the LED lighting and all that. So that's kind of a wide shot of our main hangar where we do our main completions there at Tri-City. So I wanted to jump in a little bit more about the family and how this business went. One thing is I wanted to talk real quickly about my son, Rodney. He started in the paint shop back when he got out of high school, and it's like a lot of kids, they don't know what they want to do, and when they get out of high school and they kind of maybe get in with the wrong crowd and all, but he did get in the paint shop and started there, and he worked his way up into dealing with customers. And it got to the point, we do about 3 shows a year where we exhibit an airborne law enforcement, a air medical show, and then also a helicopter convention. And at these shows, people used to come up and see me, and I'd have Rodney there when he was little, and oh, this is your Steve, this is Rodney, this is your son. Well, in 15 years ago, it started being, after he took over, nobody knew Steve Wysong anymore. They all knew Rodney. So at the shows, they'd come up. If Rodney wasn't there, they said, well, who are you? And well, I'm Steve. Well, what do you do in the company? well, I'm known as Rodney's dad, but I kind of started all this. So it was really a blessing for me to see him, adapt and to be able to come into the world we deal in with all these customers and be able to take care of them. And that's one of the big things I promote is customer service, is taking care of the customers after you deliver the aircraft. So he became like the face of the company, but then about 7.5 years ago, we found out that he had developed a tumor behind his eye that was cancer. And he fought it for 2.5 years, but and we went all over the country. We had the means of trying to get him help, but we did lose him to cancer about 5 years ago. And but through all that he had done with in the industry and the respect he had gained from our customers, a couple of customers had done in Charlotte at one of our air medical shows later on. This is Medtrans, which is now the parent company, is actually the largest helicopter company in the U.S. And they presented this portrait to us of Rodney and a bunch of their helicopters there, and this was actually the guy to the right of the picture is the president of the company out of Dallas that presented it to me, and so it's in our boardroom now, hanging on the wall. So he's kind of still there with us whenever we have meetings. They also did another thing on the 4 local wings aircraft, which have been repainted now. It's changed to Heart. Wings Air is no longer, but it's now Heart since the merger. Ballard decided they wanted to kind of go to a new program. But for about 4 years, all 4 of their helicopters were flying around with his name up on the tail. And that was a real tribute and to me and him. This was leaving Charlotte at the show where they had put it on. They moved the aircraft out in a parking lot. This was in front of the NASCAR headquarters there in Charlotte before they took off. And then another thing, a tribute that came up was last year Timothy Hill put through the state a request, and they approved it to rename the highway in front of our hangar, half a mile of Highway 75 there, as the Rodney Wysong Memorial Highway. So that was another nice tribute, and that meant more to me having his name up there than mine, actually, because I see it every day that I go to work. So it means a lot to me. And so backing up, when I was a kid, I want to talk a little bit about I've told you I'm on the board at Doe River, and to me, camp as a kid, I went to church camp. I became a believer at 7 years old. I was raised in church all my life. My dad was actually going to be a pastor until he died, but I went to church camp. And I felt like that's where I grew up, and it's the first time you're away from your parents, and it's kind of you one-on-one and you and God talking, and you just grow up a lot there, and you learn a lot of things. And so camp meant a lot to me as a kid. So now I'm involved in Doe River Gorge out at Hampton, and Rodney actually went there the first year that they had camp back in the late 90s, and had a profession of faith. But as I said, sometimes kids, when they get into the college years and all that, they kind of wonder sometimes, and he did for a few years. But after he found out about the cancer, he said, "Dad, I'm going back to my roots." I said, I'm going back to being believing that the Lord's there for me, and I'm trusting in Him. And he told me one night, about 6 months before he died, we're sitting in a hotel room in New York waiting on an appointment the next day, and he said, "Dad," he says, "you don't have to worry about me when I die, because," he says, "I trust Christ and I'm going to heaven when I die." And I told him, I said, "Rodney, you couldn't tell me anything better than that." And so I know I'm going to see him again there one day. And that's, people ask me how I'm doing. And when I go to these trade shows, it's kind of an opportunity to tell my faith with them or witness to them about, how I'm doing, because I have the Lord in my life. And so it wasn't to be. We had him for 35 years, but there's been some nice tributes. And so, I thought I had my whole future plan. Rodney was going to take over the business. Well, when he passed away, I got back into it, and then didn't know where we were going to head. But then about 1.5 years ago, I guess even longer than that, we've been talking. My son-in-law here, John Davis, that's here with us today, put that picture up. We had talked about possibly coming into the business, and he went through ETSU. He's got a master in business there at ETSU, and then he got on over here at the I don't know if you call it the Glass Cathedral or the main offices here at Eastman. He worked there for about 6 years and had a pretty good job over there, but decided he wanted to kind of move down from a little bit of the corporate world and get into a business that he could maybe do more or help out more. So we got together about a year and a half ago, and he's now working for me full time with the plans on he's going to be, president or taking over one day. So this was actually a picture. We got an opportunity, something we have in common with each other is playing golf, and we had a chance to take a helicopter this is up at Diamond, up in Banner Elk, and we landed and they picked us up in the car and went and played 18 holes, and this is him in the hangar there. Anyway, I'm glad to have him with us now, and it's a future we've got to keep the company here and keep it going forward. So last thing is kind of project. I told you I'm out at Doe River Gorge, and I'm spending a lot more time out there, and this is a rendition of what we're in the works. This has not really been publicly released, even though one of the news stations has broadcast it, but it's a project we call the Christmas Train. And there was a camp in Dry Gulch, Oklahoma, that ran this for 20 years. And about 5 years ago, we thought about trying to do one here. And because we own 3 miles of the Tweetsie Railroad that goes back in the gorge, and we're already in the train business. And they decided to sell the camp, and they called us, said if we gave you a really reasonable price on all the assets, would you be interested? So we have bought all their assets, moved them all out to the gorge. This is a rendition of what we're planning on doing with the track. We own all this property now, and project, we most likely won't have it. We know we won't have it going this Christmas, but we're hoping by the following Christmas. But we moved 57 tractor trailer loads of rail cars, engines, and track, and all these lit billboards that light up, and costumes, and this was all really Disney quality stuff. And so we're trying to get that going. We think people from all over the South have come to this. Last year they had it. Tickets went on sale at 12:09 on Friday, and they sold 60,000 tickets in 20 minutes. And so it's not just really a Christmas story. It tells the story from the beginning of the universe, creation, all the way up through the resurrection. And it's really quality done, and it's something we're trying to do to present to people that probably wouldn't even set foot in a church, but they, on a 12-minute train ride, will hear the whole Bible story with the birth and also the resurrection. So it's something I'm passionate about, because camp meant a lot to me. Like I said, with my son, he spent an afternoon after he found out about the cancer, about 4 hours with the camp director, and they went back and talked, and it just meant a lot being able to go out there. So that's probably about much time as I got, so I guess that's about it. If there's any...
Steve, could you take a couple of questions?
Yeah, I'm